I said, she and I have known each other for about 20 years. And I was just talking a little bit before the rest of you came in. And I had not the completely usual college track either. I didn't start out in community college. If I knew then what I know now, I'd be sitting where you guys are. I think it's a good place to start. I am the youngest of 8 children. I'm the first in my family to get a bachelor's degree. And so it was a hard row for me to hoe. But I lived at home. I commuted to school. I worked part-time to pay for it. And it took me 6 years till I finally got that degree. But it was well worth it. It was a lot of hard work. But it was definitely worth it. I started at the company where Marie and I worked literally the day after I graduated. And I worked there for almost 10 years. And it was a great experience. I started as a project engineer, slowly worked my way up until I was a supervisor. And I learned to do a lot of different things. And a lot of times when you're sitting in class, you'll be thinking, am I ever really going to use this? You know, is this something that I need 10 years down the road? In all honesty, probably not. Not the content of what you're learning. But the thing that I've learned throughout my career is that the most valuable thing that I've learned is not the specific knowledge, but the transferable skills. And so whether your degree is in math, or in chemistry, or in engineering, the most important things that you're learning are how to learn, how to communicate, both verbally, but also in written form. I know at least some of you guys do research, and you know, when you're doing research, you're gathering information, you're analyzing that information, but you're not keeping that to yourself. One of the most critical pieces of the process is being able to pass that information on to other people so that they can use it. And for them to be able to use it, they have to be able to understand it. So if there's no organization to it, if it's very cryptic, then it can be the best data, it can be the best analysis in the world. But if the next person down the line can't use it, then it's useless data. It's useless information. So really, it's, you know, like I said, chances are the specific information that you guys are learning about, you may never learn. You may never. You're going to learn, but you're not going to necessarily use that. You know, granted, there will be some specific things that you learn, but when you think about the mass of information that you're going to take in as you progress toward your degree, you know, a lot of it, you're not going to use that specific information, but you're going to use the skills that you learn along the way. So a lot of you guys, you know, are obviously taking 100 level, 200 level classes. And those actually, to me, are some of the most fundamental. Because even though, you know, you may not use the specific information, the 100 and 200 level classes are a foundation for what you're going to build on. And particularly the math and the basic science classes, for you to be able to take on 300, 400 level classes in the future, you've got to be able to understand those. You've got to understand the fundamentals of what you're learning in those classes. And again, it's not just the information, but it's also the skills that you develop during these early classes. I have a senior in high school right now, and I was talking before most of you got here, and so right now, he's been accepted to several colleges, so we're about to have those discussions about, where are you finally going to go, what are you going to study, and if he would listen to me the way that I hope you guys are listening to me right now, the things that I would tell him are, set up good learning habits and really focus on those skills at this level, because in addition to the basic information, learning how to study, learning how to take good notes, when you're doing lab reports, finding out how to communicate that information to, in this case, obviously, to the teacher. And a lot of times, teachers will be very specific about how lab reports and such things need to be laid out. They do that for a reason. And that, again, it should be a fundamental piece of your education, because it's that structure and that layout that they're there to help you learn how to communicate what's important and to come up with formatting, really, is a big piece of it. How do you present the information to somebody else? Because if they can't understand it, it's useless. And that's, so many people, and I hate to make generalization, but particularly in technical fields, they're so good technically, but they have such a hard time passing that information to other people. And it's so, so vital. In every job that I've had, and I've actually only been with 2 companies. I was with Bowles Fluidics, which is where Mrs. Burness and I met. And then actually I stayed home to raise I actually have 2 sons. One is a senior in high school and the other one's a sophomore in high school. So I actually took 10 years off away from my career. And I've been back with Avapco for 2 years. And so I haven't moved around to a lot of companies, but within both of the companies, I moved positions, and it's always important to be able to pass your information on to other people, and to focus on not just the information, but the skills. So at Avapco, I was hired, like I said, after 10 years, and another guy that Maria and I used to work with, he actually is staying home now to raise his 2 children. And we're friends, so we've kept in touch. And as he was getting ready to stay home, he said, "Susan, you've been," and he was staying home just as I was going back to work. And so he said to me, he said, "Susan, how, after all this time, were you able to go back into the workforce as an engineer?" And it was tough. It was definitely tough. I wasn't sure that anybody would hire me as an engineer. I had been out of the workforce for 10 years. But one of the things that I did when I was not working was I kept up a lot of my skills. And I did that through volunteering. And again, it was, so when I sat down to write my resume, after having been out of the workforce for 10 years, I didn't focus on the job history. I focused on those skills that I've talked about, the transferable skills. So my communication skills, my attention to detail, my project management skills. That was from the time I was in high school. My favorite assignments were always project assignments. You know, it's funny because my kids, they both hate projects. You know, they want an assignment, they want to get an assignment, they want to do it, and they just want it to be done. I love projects. How many of you guys like projects as opposed to just short-term assignments? So a couple of you. So what I like about projects is I like being given sort of a broad assignment. And I like being able to have some freedom to say, okay, this is where I am. This is where I need to get. How do I get there? I like breaking things down into smaller pieces. I like figuring out, okay, there are, you know, 6 different ways I can get from here to there. What, you know, which ways are the best? What, you know, what are some advantages, disadvantages? I did those kinds of things even in the non-engineering world as a volunteer. You know, I would take on bigger projects and say, yep, you know, I'll take care of that. You know, I would pull in other people as I needed to. But again, I was keeping up my transferable skills, which that's really what my takeaway message from this is that it's not just the specific technical or, you know, your specific math information, your specific science. It's knowing how to pull all of that together, knowing how to communicate it. So, you know, they're the big pieces. So, as I said, when I started with Avapco, they hired me as a marketing engineer, which was a good fit because basically it wasn't super technical, and I had been out of the workforce for 10 years, so I wasn't feeling overly confident about my technical skills. But, you know, I jumped in, I started learning everything I could learn. Returning to work was actually, the work part was surprisingly easy for me. The home life work adjustment was another story. But the work part of it, it just felt natural to me. Even after I graduated from college, I ran into one of my professors a couple years later, and I was working at the time, and he said, "Susan, work really agrees with you." I said, "Yeah, I like it much more than where you guys are right now." It just, for me, you know, and everybody's different, but for me, I find work very fulfilling. And so when I started at Avapco, you know, I just jumped in with both feet and started learning everything I could learn, talking to basically whoever would put up with me. And within a year, the upper management asked me if I wanted a promotion and to move to the software development team, which at first I was like, "You want me to do what? You want me to program?" You know, it's been more than 20 years since I did any programming, and I wasn't really crazy about it then. But it turned out that they noticed that I was very detail-oriented, and that I was very organized, and that I was good at solving problems. And lo and behold, even though it was a position that I would never have foreseen myself going to, it's been a really, really good fit. Which, you know, so how many of you feel like you have a pretty good handle on the type of job you want to be hired into after you have a degree? So a few of you. I didn't have a clue. I've never really had a clue. You know, like I said, I like working. I've always liked to work. I know the types of things that I like to do, but I never had, other than when I decided to get a degree in engineering, I never really had any specific ideas. So if you don't sweat it too much, because the beauty of getting a technical degree is that it opens up a lot of different doors for you. You know, obviously I know quite a few engineers, and it's amazing how many different directions you can go with a technical degree. And, you know, you guys who have some idea of where you'd like to be, that's great. You know, and work toward that. If you change your mind, again, don't sweat it too much, because the programs that you're taking and the things that you're learning, and again, the transferable skills that you're developing will allow you to go a myriad of places and do just an unbelievable variety of things. You know, if I think about the people that I went to college with, we're all over the place, you know, both geographically and from a career standpoint. You know, we all have the piece of paper that we got. It all says Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, but we're doing lots and lots of different things. So, you know, I know the technical fields are not easy to get through in school, but it's sort of the price of admission to open a lot of different doors. And again, getting back to to what I started with, you're probably not going to use the vast majority of the specific stuff that you're learning in school, but being able to have that piece of paper and say, I worked, I was able to do what they put in front of me, that means a lot to employers. As I mentioned, at my previous job, I was a supervisor, so I have hired people. So I've been on the receiving end of those resumes that you guys are supposed to be working on. And, you know, knowing that someone has been able to go through a technical program, that in and of itself says a lot about you as an individual. And there are lots of things that you can focus on, and certainly I strongly encourage you to really think about the types of things that you like, both the specific subjects as well as, you know, do you prefer project type classes, you know, or project type assignments? Do you prefer, you know, data crunching? Those are the kinds of things that will help you when it comes time to look for a job. And maybe not so much time when it comes time to look for your first job, because most of you will be, you know, will be looking at a fairly broad spectrum. That would be my guess. I know most of the people that, you know, are new graduates, they tend to have a, you know, a relatively wide search, which there's nothing wrong with that. But certainly as you go forward, both in school and then as you have a career, really think about the types of things that you like to do and the types of really how you like to work. You know, if you're doing research, is that what you like? Do you like doing the hands-on kinds of things? Would you prefer to be on the receiving end of that research information and sort of taking it to the next level? Do you like working with other people? You know, a lot of people who go for technical degrees tend to be pretty introverted, including me. Yeah. Which, you know, when I was in where you guys are now, being here was a horrifying prospect for me. I could not imagine. Yes.
We've got 5 minutes. I think this really helps students to figure out, you know, from a personal perspective. There are two things that at play also that I'd like you to cover in 5 minutes.
Sure.
One is, unfortunately, the community college students do compete with the 4-year when it comes to getting an internship.
Right.
And that's a critical piece.
Right.
So the question for you is, how do you get, first will be, I've got several parts. How do you get a foot in the door when you're competing with juniors and seniors? How do you, and if you don't get your foot in the door, how do you keep open, trying to get foot in the door? And let's say in Josh's case, he did get his foot in the door. How do you keep in touch for 2 years later? Because you did mention that 10 years later you were able to get another job. But internship, you know, how do you keep that in touch? And the second perspective I think is really important, because, you know, you and I see it, right? I don't think we see the students see it, and that is, they're very focused. Now, I know they're not raising their hands, but they're very focused on what they want to do. But they don't have any clue of the other opportunities that are out there. And unfortunately, what happens is there are students in our classes who say, I want to go to nursing, and they will do whatever it takes to go to nursing, be it 7 years. But if you tell them, look, there is something else that you're good at, they just don't see that. So the question is, how do these students see that in the next 2 years? That maybe if one door shuts down on them, there's the other door that might open on them. How do they find that door? So the first thing is internship, getting the foot in the door, and second is, how do they look for those opportunities out there?
So internships are a huge, huge asset. But as Raza said, you know, you have to be able to get in somewhere to have one. And I don't know how it's set up here. I did an internship in college, and I just got it through the college. They had a college of...
Yeah, we don't have anything here.
Okay.
That's the issue.
That's the issue.
How do you compete with students from other colleges?
So, obviously you're at a disadvantage. Talk to other people you know. I will hand out my business card, and as Josh knows, Evapco does do internships, and I know they're talking right now about how many positions they'll have in what departments this summer. Really, it just takes a lot of work. Talk to people you know, talk to your parents, ask your parents if they know anybody who works in a company who might have an internship. I'm sure you guys have all heard the term networking, and networking it's a lot of work, but it definitely pays off. My husband is also a mechanical engineer, and he, for most of his career, obviously, he didn't take a 10-year break in the middle because somebody had to pay the bills. But except for his very first job from college, every single job, and he's had, you know, whereas I've been with 2 companies, he's been with probably a dozen different companies. He works on a contract basis. Other than that very first job, every single job that he's gotten since he's graduated from college has been through somebody that he knows. And you know, you guys are at somewhat of a disadvantage because you're young, and you know, so your contacts are somewhat limited. But again, you know, talk to anybody that you know. You know, if there are older students in any of your classes who you know are working, talk to them. You know, tell them, you know, I'd love to be able to get an internship. You know, is the company that you're working for, you know, will they have any internship opportunities? Do you know of anybody else who does? You got to talk about it. You've got to let people know that you're interested. Get those resumes together. And again, don't just focus on the classes that you're taking, but focus on what you can bring to the table. Because you know what? Most people who are hiring, you know,